welcome to the Animal Training Academy Making Ripples podcast show, the show where we share the stories of the ripple-making extraordinaires with behavior nerd superpowers who make up the Animal Training Academy membership. I'm your host and one of the happiness engineers at Animal Training Academy, Shelley Wood from Drop Your Jaws Dog Training in Cape Girardeau, Missouri in the United States. We're absolutely thrilled and grateful to have you here with us today. Make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss a single episode. This show is brought to you on behalf of the Animal Training Academy membership. So if you like the conversations in these episodes, then we want to invite you to continue them with like-minded people in the ATA membership, which you can find out more about at www.atamember.com. Within the membership, you can get access to twice monthly live web classes, the back catalog of previous web class replays, plus a huge library of videos and projects to help you problem solve your training challenges. And we're a sociable bunch with an exclusive private Facebook group and forums area. It's like a Netflix social media platform for animal behavior geeks. But we will get started on today's episode where we will be talking to one JR Henderson. JR Henderson is a crazy cat dude residing in Rochester, New York with his amazing clouder of Condi, Durga, and Poe. He's the owner and operator of Zen Cats Rock, a constructional behavioral modification service specializing in conditioning guardians to understand and effectively minimize aversive behavioral interactions between themselves and felines, most commonly in the forms of inappropriate elimination, inappropriate scratching, aggression issues, introductions of all sorts, medication administration, and all the little quirks that our cats express, from counter surfing to attacking feet at 3 a.m. He's a proponent of added reinforcement and least intrusive-based approaches, conditioning relationality between guardians and felids for a lifetime of success. A graduate of the Companion Animal Sciences Institute, JR has over 3,000 hours working, volunteering with cats in the shelter system and private consults. A passionate supporter of TNR and working toward a no-euthanasia nation and then world, his focuses on feline welfare reside in guardian education, cooperative care husbandry, the power of play and scheduled feedings, feline diet, and fostering species-appropriate behavior via all forms of enrichment. He also works as an RN in a busy psychiatric emergency department, interacting with patients as young as 5 years of age to geriatrics. In his free time, he enjoys hiking, cooking, playing six-string bass, practicing Krav Maga, and thinking about behavior. So without further ado, it is my very great pleasure to welcome JR Henderson to the show today. JR, thank you so much for taking the time to come and hang out with us today. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing very well. Shelley, thank you for having me, and thank you to all of ATA for all of your awesomeness.
Well, we are very lucky to have you here with us today, and I'm excited to dive in and chat with the things that we have planned to, or chat with you about the things that we have planned to talk about today. First off, that's quite the bio. When I got to the part that said, in his free time, I wanted to ask, what free time?
I know.
It sounds like you're very busy already. And then in your free time, you had quite a list of really fun things it sounds like you enjoy doing as well. So I'm hoping maybe we can unpack some of those things just a little bit this morning. And what I'd really like is if you could talk a little bit about how some of those things that maybe don't fit into the box that we would label animal training influence your animal training, and how your animal training maybe influences some of those other amazing things that you're doing.
When you ask me that, it's such a beautiful question. And one of the things I love reading about people's postings on ATA is when you read their life experiences beyond training and how that feeds into it. We all have these great postings with our beautiful animals, but then we're people beyond that. And I think that really adds in. And for myself, I do find that overlap in areas it's a lifestyle. I think a lot of us live our life, whether it's we're reading growth mindset now or just really trying to add reinforcement to ourselves, to the world, that definitely spills over into other areas. And I think with the nursing, I've been doing that for about 10 years. I was in med surg for about 8, psych for about almost a year here. And it comes up in many ways. One of the things nursing is very heavy in is evidence-based practice, data collection, trying to figure out what's the best quality way. So sometimes I try to find, these great articles, which we find through resources on ATA or other people mentioning them and seeing that from a behavior aspect. So definitely that aspect of the evidence following where our training plans want to go. And that kind of follows right into nursing and care plans. For patients, we care plan. For our animals, it's a training plan. So it's serving a function in the end. And we're trying to get there in a way that encourages relationality, cooperation, and that there is much a part of it. It's a team approach. So I think that comes into it. Patients definitely, I think, in communication are big ones too. I mean, some days I have more patience than others with myself, and I think that affects how I interact with the world. But those are definitely skills that I've come through in nursing, if nothing else, that have definitely helped me in animal training and realizing if it is that rough session, it's always in the trainer, but at the same time, let's not beat ourselves up and let's just, hey, tomorrow is another day. We can set it up a little different. So I think those areas are pretty big for me. And then the last two, I think with nursing particularly, were teaching. We do a lot of teaching education for patients, whether it's feedback on how you can best prevent, having to come back to the hospital in a month and how to best stabilize that wellness and add that into your life as a continuing trend to sustain that great nurturing well-being that you can do for your own self when you choose to make certain choices. So that comes into it, teaching back, and with clients, it's a lot of teach back, as we all know. I mean, we can have that plan in our head and we can go to the house and we can work with the animal, but if the client isn't on board as a team, that family isn't on board, there's going to be no success. And I think that's one of the hard parts. So everything's a work in progress for me in my life, but I think those are some areas of the teaching that I've really strived to work on so I can better make a difference with the cases I work with. And then the holistic trend in nursing, I think we do the same thing on animal training with enrichment, from, how we feed to how we play to how we do different areas that, work with our scent, work with different muscles. So it's that enriching, providing species appropriate opportunities. And I think with nursing, this holistic trend of the body, the spirit, the mind, I'm not going to go into whether I think those ideas really exist apart from words, but I think it's a neat way to show that there's many encompassing aspects that set us up for success. But then I think you just make me think of the music real quick. One thing I try to do with my cues is get more musical with them, differentiate them more through different tonality, different decibel, different frequency, almost a sing-song way. Ryan used a great analogy for training recently that it's like a dance, and, it's like a dance. It's like a song. It's so many different ways of communicating through our verbiage in our body. So I've worked more with my cues to differentiate them in a musical way. And I think I have an easier time remembering song lyrics. I think we all do remember song lyrics, as opposed to I could sing you a song a lot easier than recite a poem. So the cues are easier when I do it in a musical way. I remember them a little more in the way I want to evoke them. And then Krav Maga is just about muscle memory for myself, working to stay fit, to do a different art for your body that really hones different muscle mechanics that help you to better hold your body in a way that will keep you healthy from a physical standpoint, but also maybe save your life if someone tries to rob you, you never know. But so those obviously go into training too, because we're working with the animal's mechanics in the body. I think some people have done some really neat stuff, just listening to the way they can break down and review a body and see those little twitches in the muscle. I think Hannah Brannigan's brought that up a few times, and I really enjoy when she mentions it. So getting to that nano training almost, if you will. But that's pretty much how my life, just off the cusp of my head, feeds into it. I'm sure there's other areas we could all investigate in our lives. And I think that's what's so fascinating, is we all have all these facets and aspects that go in and interact with our training and make us who we are. So long-winded answer. I'm a talker. I kissed the Blarney Stone. What can I say?
A wonderful answer. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. And you touched on a lot of things that I was thinking about asking you about as I read your bio. I think that right off the bat, a helping profession like nursing, for anybody who's involved in animal training, I think it's kind of, for me at least, it's easy to see how there might be some overlap there, just like you said, working with clients and working with people in that profession, and the training plans versus the caregiving plans plans and all of that as well. But I was really hoping you would talk a little bit about the music and the Krav Maga. So I'm glad that you did. And I hadn't really thought about that I like this idea of getting more musical with your cues. Can you think of an example of a cue that you have gotten a little bit musical with in your work?
I definitely can. I think these ideas really started coming out. I took a really cool class by Vidya on concept training recently, and she mentioned a podcast from Kay Lawrence, and Kay had this idea of using different tonality with cues that would, as opposed to they're all, sounding very monotone or bland, just engaging them with a dynamic in their own right that, helps to really discriminate what we're asking the animal to do. So I feel like with my own cues from the concept course, I could do a few. It was for bigger, smaller. The bigger one is troll. So it's a troll. It's kind of going to this fantasy world. And the smaller one is Alpha. So that's from this comedy cartoon that's been on Netflix, Disenchanted, I think. But stuff like that. And for just other ones I've been working to do too, in terms of stuff like, sit or come, differentiating them in some ways so that I can help to remember what they are. And I still have to go before I do. Maybe I know what I'm doing in the session, say, okay, what did that look like? What did that sound like? The Voice Memos app is really cool because it shows those waves and it's almost like a game. You can record and see if you can match that frequency when you do each time to make it more of a universal as opposed to you're fluctuating here or there with the scale. So that's just one challenge that I've been putting upon myself more. The story I love that Kay Lawrence told was she was doing, I don't know if it was agility or competition, but one of those areas where you couldn't use the dog's name, but what she did was changed up the intonation of the dog's name for each cue she gave. So she used the dog's name repeatedly for different evocative cues and different tonalities and frequencies. And the judges, I guess she said, didn't know what to do with that. But that idea, you can play around even with one word and morph it to some degree so that you'll still get, 8 different reactions from 8 different inflections of it, so to speak. But again, how much time do you want to put into memorizing that, and rehearsing it? But it's a neat to think about. And I don't know if I've read any studies on it. And I think that would be a neat area to see acoustics and training and discrimination more.
Great. Thank you for sharing those cues with us and for talking a little bit more about that. Was that also the podcast where Kay talked about giving cues with like color words like yellow? I think she might have said at one point.
Yes, most definitely that was. Yep.
Okay, yes, I heard that too. That was a great one. And yep. I have not intentionally done that with any of the cues that I use with the animals in my life, but I have certainly done it accidentally. My sort of my everyday recall for my dog is here. And one time I remember saying to her, like, here, and she didn't respond at all. And then I was like, here, and she comes running. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've totally conditioned to this cue, to this silly tone that I've been using with her. So I think that people can probably relate to that, and very, very good. Interesting to hear.
Well, and I just a little aside of that too, to bring up again, I think it was on drinking from the toilet, but Hannah talked about same thing. If she said a cue and her mother said a cue, with one accent from one state to the other, it's going to be, maybe different syllables and different, a little bit different decibel intonation. So it's interesting to see how that plays over, especially if you have an animal that's training, with different trainers and different accents and
Yeah, definitely very interesting. And you mentioned an app, I think you said Voice Memo. I'm not familiar with that.
It's an iPhone. I think it's just the standard voice recorder on iPhone. Hold on actually one second. I'll see. Make sure it is called that. I'm pretty sure. Voice Memos on the iPhone. I don't know if it's an Apple app on all devices, but it's cool. It's standard on there and it gives you just enough what you need. It's simple.
Okay, great. I will have to check that out on my iPhone then. Thank you for sharing that. Also, I wondered, you mentioned with the Krav Maga, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
You got it.
So you mentioned with the Krav Maga, and I also kind of wonder about with the music as well. But with the Krav Maga, you mentioned, I believe that it kind of helps tune you into working a little bit more with animals and their body mechanics. I wonder if you think the music and or the Krav Maga help you with your mechanics related to training.
That's a really interesting question. I think they probably do. Strange story, but since with what's been going on in the world, it's been harder to work out, harder to do these social things, which we've been doing. So I kind of had the opportunities. I've been trying, but I used to be working out quite a bit and doing the Krav Maga much more than I am now. But I found that my reflex is actually enhanced, meaning, if I drop something, I could almost catch it. It wasn't having those little silly little, bumps and knock stuff out of your hand. I'm like, oh, I noticed that. So I do think it helps with, in terms of processing time, in terms of just being more in control of, from pushing that click on time, because personally I do use the mechanical clicker to just not clicking pre or after. So I think it helps with that. I think it also helps to realize if you're moving in terms of giving a cue. Is my body still? Am I reaching toward the treat pouch? Am I lifting a shoulder? Because it's just getting you in tune with your body. That's more the Krav Maga. But I think the bass is an interesting one because I do play with the fingers, do a lot of slap bass. So that's working those same muscles that we are in terms of reacting to the response we're getting if we're using that mechanical clicker, or just timing overall in terms of keeping a beat. So yeah, I think it does make a difference. When I'm training, I always try to have that internal beat in my head. I do time my sessions, but thinking, all right, how much time has gone by? Because with Criterion, I do have a latency expectation and then, a hold that's reinforcements available for. So I do think that internal metronome is always there, whether it's just because, I play an instrument, I enjoy music. I don't know. I think we probably all have it to some degree, this internal rhythm, what time signature in, I don't know.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that answer as well. I think we could probably spend all of our time here just unpacking your bio and the overlap between animal training and the rest of those things that you're involved in. But for the sake of time, I say let's move on to the next topic. All right. So let's get on to the next topic. And if you could share with us a recent training related challenge that you have experienced, kind of how you worked through that challenge, and maybe a little bit about what you learned as you worked through that challenge.
Yeah. What a great question. So one challenge that I've really been thinking back in terms of, I do take a lot of behavior cases, as we kind of were just going over in the bio for felines, in terms of what they are with the behavior. It runs the gambit, as we kind of went from aggression to inappropriate elimination, what we would call inappropriate scratching from our perspective on a surface we don't want. Some of the most interesting ones and challenging ones are the introduction ones, though, of all means, because they're so complex. But one subtype of that I did deal with recently over the last few months, and that's quite an interesting case in itself, is when you're introducing a newborn baby to a cat. Some families will take more time than others. Some will just say, uh-oh, we have this newborn in the house, the cat's not responding well, and we need to figure out what to do. Whereas other people maybe are have more foresight, so they'll get ahead of it. And this case was one of those where the people called me before they actually, the baby wasn't born yet. So, it was about 3 months before. So we started getting everything ready for that. The cat was about 6 years old. So it was a challenge, because what you're doing is trying to establish a situation that isn't really established yet, and introduce the animal to that new standard when it hasn't occurred. So what that case takes a lot is, it sounds so strange, but we'll mingle scents. The world is already a little off for the cats. I mean, hormones are different, so the world smells different in the cat's environments. Usually people's routines are a little bit changed anyway in that crazy heightened time of those 9 months. So sometimes things get off, and that can cause anxiety in its own right. But what we did was we found one of the couple's friends who had a baby recently and used washcloths rubbed on the baby for scents. So introducing that smell to the cat, it's almost like we've talked so much recently, about different approaches, maybe utilizing negative reinforcement to help with aggression and then add affectation to them. This was more of like a classical counter conditioning desensitization, and not even so because the cat necessarily didn't have a negative response to these things, but introducing it in a gradient to frequencies of a baby, the cryings of a baby, the murmurings of a baby. So we had, a little on the iPad, it had some recordings of that. We had the sense. So getting that started, having that nursery established, letting that cat kind of roam and see that change in the nursery. Cases like this are so fun and challenging because you're like, oh my gosh, is the work going to pay off? These are just ground rules. But to get the people to buy in with these cases, it's sometimes a lot of effort to be on board over, okay, we're going to start this 3 months previous because it's going to set up for a lifetime of success. You just got to kind of, we got to have the buy-in. But these people were awesome. They put in the work. And so we had this whole world of baby without baby already ready. So when the baby came, there were a few adjustments with that. But it was pretty smooth because the parents they weren't as anxious around the cat. They weren't trying to restrict her, if it gets in the room with a baby, jump up and block it or anything like that. It was almost like, we did a lot of targeting in the baby's room when the cat was there with the baby, positive associations. But I love cases like that because you're teaching people, you're enabling them to have this toolbox of empowerment that they can use. But especially cases like that are some of the most fun. These introductions from babies to dogs to other cats, because the dynamic of them, you never really know. You're working with different personalities and really trying to hone positive associations. And it's a little bit of an investigation. You never know what's going to work, what isn't going to work. So you do have these set models. And then when the guardians do put the input, I think it's so amazing to see it all come to fruition and be successful like this one was. So I think that case was one of my recent fun training challenges. There were some there. None in particular that we, got stuck on or anything. It was just the basic ones for, the cat hissed, and we had to kind of readjust the distance when we were introducing, when the actual baby was there. But I love that because people get on board. I think the biggest challenge for me is getting people to get on board and then do their homework, because if you go back 2 weeks, they didn't do the homework, you're right where you were, that gets a little challenging. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge I have. Usually the cats know what they're doing. They just fall into place pretty well. It's, in establishing ritual, rhythm, routine, schedule in the daily life and kind of adjusting some areas where maybe they're, needing a little bit more empowerment or enrichment and going from there. A long-winded answer, but I will say real quick, some of the most fun cases too are the litter box ones, because it's such an investigative thing too, in terms of using different substrates, different litter boxes, figuring out, is the cat spraying? Why is it marking? What's it maybe seeing outside? So some of the most challenging can definitely be those ones because they take a lot of detective work. Usually people have a pretty good idea of what they think is going on. It's figuring out, is that really going on, or are there more components to it? Yes, it might be a cat's walking by a neighbor cat, but it's also, their kid is terrorizing the cat too. So, you have these multifaceted aspects that really make it more complex. So those cases I find are some of the most fun because then it's just, I like to call those literally thinking outside of the box cases. I mean, I've used everything from huge totes to get the cat back in and shrunk them as if they were a stationing platform to, using newspaper from dirt outside, from sand, figuring out what the cat will go in and then kind of blending that into something that we actually can use as a substrate for a litter box. So I think those are some of the most challenging though for felines overall, because there's such high stakes cases. Usually people are calling when it's been going on for 6 months. It's never, this is the third time, this is the 300th time it's happened. So it's so well established. And usually when people call, sometimes unfortunately they're at that burned out phase where it's like, you gotta, and that comes up, I think, back to the teaching and communication. You got to ask them, how much investment do you still have in this situation if we really need to fix it? Because otherwise, we could figure out maybe a better solution for the cat if we're ever home in another place. So that becomes tricky too. But those are the most challenging, I think, getting guardians' feedback and buy-in a lot of the times, and then sticking to the work. And then the litter box cases, just because those I always feel like a 50s detective.
Great examples, and very different examples from the super proactive folks that are calling you 3 months before the baby is there to people who are potentially calling after the litter box problem has been happening over and over. Do you get a lot?
Those are rarer too. I've only got 2 baby cases in probably in my whole time. A lot of the biggest cases are aggression introductions because people get a new cat and just kind of let it out and then let them figure it out. And that, they'll figure out who gets a claw in the eye and, who gets a big bite in the ear and who's going to get the bigger vet bill, but it really doesn't figure out anything beyond that. So that's a lot of the cases. Litter box are a lot of the cases. And then aggression, those are probably the biggest ones. Inappropriate scratching usually always comes into it, though. And they also scratch here or there. So you always, it's like if you're purchasing a computer, you have all these add-ons. It's like, hey, we're calling you for the litter box issue, but this is going on too, and this, and this. So we'll check those boxes. So, whether they're all functionally related or not is to be figured out, but.
Well, thank you very much for sharing all of that so far with us. I wonder if you would be willing to talk now about a particular story or behavior related to training that you're proud of. I would be pretty proud of the things that you have already talked about, but maybe there's something else that you are, that was that you're extra proud of or that went really well that you'd like to share about with us.
Yeah, I think I thought about this, and one of the ones that I'm probably most proud because it affects the life of me and what I call, in term for my gang and my cats, my clouder is the cooperative toothbrushing. That's come quite a long way from posting about it on the ATA forums, I think in 2018, to actually being able to have a finger brush now on my, finger. And Poe, Durga too, Condi is still working with that one. But Poe buys in, for extensions of 3 to 5 seconds of allowing that manipulation and biting down. That is probably one of the ones that I'm proudest of because hopefully it'll save me money with, dental for the cats, of course, cha-ching, cha-ching. But it's going to manage their health. And it also gives them more choice and control. And it's something that I've stuck with that we went from in the beginning, using what you would see in the hospital is a mouth swab with a finger brush over it, using that, to using a Q-tip with a finger brush over it, to an actual toothbrush, trying to figure out what's going to do the best, from me thinking, I'll try to rub on the side, as opposed to realizing maybe when they just bite, that shearing is going to be the best for it and I can still get that side access. So the challenges of figuring out what functionally serve the best to cover the most dental enamel in terms of the accessing to what they would allow, to what they were most comfortable with in terms of the progression of it. I feel probably most proud of that one because, we mentioned how do your other aspects of your life, flow into your others. And one thing I do think is training is really about husbandry. I think a lot of us could agree with that, from the real rubber meets the road, and a lot of these issues we see on ATA, the beautiful postings of people having to do these vaccinations, take temperatures, do teeth brushing, open mouth holds. So that's most important for me. The other stuff is fun, but we really do condition for these moments when we need to do wellness checks and husbandry behaviors. So I think that's why I'm so proud of it too, that it's so functional and it's something that really makes a difference in their life and my life. We are seeing great videos on nail clipping, trying to figure out still what's best for that, as opposed to, Poe just kind of lays on my lap and I could have more choice and control. I want her to actually offer the paw, and it'll Durga too, and Condi we're working with. But for me, I think that teeth brushing is great. And I think that when these behaviors, when we see beautiful videos like people post in ATA of open mouth holds, or, from nail trimmings with Dremels, we see this process, and it's such a magical thing. And I think that's why this behavior especially really stuck with me, because it went through times where I was thinking, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. To now that it just seems to have such fluidity, and they're just, they just are accessing in their own care and saying, hey, yeah, you can do this. We'll help with it. So as Poe will grab my hand sometimes and hold it. But, and I think it's just wonderful to see that come together.
All right. That's a lovely example. Thank you. I think that, as you said, training is really about husbandry. I think there are a lot of us who really feel that way and know what it's like when you have a challenge like that with your animals and something you're wanting to teach them to make their lives just a little bit better for their everyday care. Yeah, I would be super proud of that if I were you as well. And what about people who reach out to you for cat training? Do you have people who reach out to you specifically? Do you ever have people who specifically reach out to you for husbandry, cooperative care type of training? Or is that just something you kind of try to add on when you're working in a more reactive way with maybe aggression or litter box cases?
That's a great question. I will say yes in some areas because I do get cases for medication administration quite often, whether it's either having to pill my cat, and they won't take maybe a treat, this or that, having to, or it's a suspension. I've worked with cats who had to have eye drops as well and ear drops. So people do seek help for that a lot of the time, which is good because that can be such a traumatic thing for both the guardian and the feline, when your cat's running from you at a certain time of day or worse, running from you at all times of day because, hey, they know what to associate you with. So I get that a lot. In terms of the training, that's such a great question. I don't necessarily just do pure cat training in terms of saying, let's do like a kitten training class or do, get my cat to sit her down. A lot of that, as you said, will come into play because I do think a lot of aggression cases can use targeting in ways to help with that. And also fearful cats. There's been some awesome stuff done with working with what we would call feral or community cats. And also the affectation training, I think for cats comes in with affect, but also food, and target training. So I have seen targeting and basic, just conditioning to approach behaviors also when the cat's ready to have some awesome impact for those kind of cases when people are either fostering or really trying to socialize cats that are more intractable to human society for the time being. But that's probably it. I do add a lot of it in there, but I don't get just pure training classes. I always, think, a kitten training class would be so fun. I'm seeing those pop up. So I love that people are doing that,
Very good. I find that a lot of times I don't get a lot of people as far as dog training goes. And where I am, I don't get a lot of people that are seeking out necessarily that cooperative care and kind of husbandry training, but always looking for places to kind of tag it on or get a little piece of it in there to get people thinking about it. So kind of a similar thing, perhaps, in your cat world.
Definitely is. And I still think the idea of cooperative care, I hate to use terms like these, but to like the layman is probably, it's hasn't caught on yet. It's a pretty cool term for us, but I don't, when I tell people I brush my cat's teeth, they're like, what? So I think a lot of the times people don't realize that there are opportunities to kind of set scenarios up so you can do these kind of cooperative type care approaches. And I think people will see that more and more, I think. But the other thing is, pets are living longer, vet bills are getting expensive. And this all helps with all of that. And I think sometimes, people, it would help to search these modalities out as maybe it could help with that kind of stuff too. I know I have a discussion every week about getting pet insurance. I just haven't yet.
Yeah, all very good points. JR, another quick question for you, and I don't think that this was in your bio. We might have talked about it when the two of us chatted briefly before this, but I'm wondering how long have you been working with cats in the shelter environment, and then also how long have you had your own business working with cats?
Yeah, great question. So really, I got my first cat when I was 6. I remember I asked mom for a cat. I was the type that mom had dogs, a collie and a mutt, and we always had animals, was horses, dogs, cats, chickens, goats, they're all spayed and neutered. We just had a menagerie. So I grew up in that kind of household, but I was always drawn towards cats. And I remember probably when I was 13 or 14, we had a cat named Thomas, and mom had agility stuff set up in the driveway, and I was leading Thomas through the cones, and I was like, oh, that's fun. And that was the first time that I ever really maybe had that kind of interaction with an animal. And then I think I started probably getting into the clicker training, I found out about Karen Pryor. I can't remember where or who through, and I can't remember who wrote the book, so I'm not going to quote it, but there was a clicker training book on cats. It came with like the Terry Ryan clicker. And I got that and I just really loved it. Started working with Durga on that. That was probably, probably about 1998-ish, 1999, 2000 maybe. And then I always had volunteered at shelters. That was always important to me. Mom always did that, and I would just tag along. Again, really working with the cats, I always was drawn towards them. And there was still, I think, a little bit of an underserved population in shelter work. We've done wonders with the dogs, which is awesome, but the cats still have a bit to come in terms of what we need to do to bump up their presence at the shelters. And I think we're seeing shelters do that with free range rooms, catifying places. So that's a beautiful thing. So I probably did shelter work from a young age in high school all the way up, probably middle school all the way up till now. I did take a job in 2009 helping to assistant manage a shelter, a local non-for-profit in our area. That was wonderful because I had so many connections with other non-for-profits and people in the area. I did behavior cases then. I was always drawn towards that aspect. I think, I was always drawn toward it. And then seeing Jackson Galaxy on My Cat from Hell was like, oh, you can do this? And then reading up on it from his books to, oh my gosh, I'm blanking right now, but the other fine authors from Roger Tabor to other behavior books, The Holistic Cat's another neat one back in the day that was put out. Probably started really doing it hardcore though about 2009, 2010 with the behavior modification, telling people, hey, I'm willing to help. It just got so hard, so many calls coming in, my cat's spraying, my cat's doing aggression, these issues that if people were interested, we could probably solve. So I thought, hey, this is the best way to try to meet this head to head and just keep these cats in homes so they don't ever enter the shelter system. So that was kind of what really gave me the impetus to get into it. And then I just kept working with it. I thought to myself, I'd like to get a certification just in it to show, hey, there's something behind this. But I didn't do that till about 2017. I looked into CASI, Companion Animal Sciences Institute, awesome program out of Ottawa. James O'Hare runs it. Brilliant man, what his resources and just his thinking, pure behaviorism, but radical behavior aspect, but really neat stuff. So I took that for the feline class, and that taught me a lot of the theory. I knew a lot of the feline aspects of it, but not being able to theory. I couldn't put a training plan together. I didn't have that criteria. That data collection wasn't as sound as it is now. So that really helped me with a lot of that in classification codes. Zen Cats Rock, I established that technically in 2018. I've been talking about it years before with people, but the website and the business cards all came out then. So that was more for me working with private clients. I still do a lot in the shelter system, but I just thought, hey, again, if I can keep cats in homes, that's the goal. So I get a lot of referrals through rescues to, hey, can you help, this person I adopted a cat out to, can you help them, go over, stop here, stop there. So I end up doing a lot of that, which again is what it's all about. So.
I appreciate you sharing a little bit of your journey to what is now Zen Cats Rock with us. Could you share with people where they can find information about Zen Cats Rock, maybe how they could contact you if they were interested in chatting more with you, just how people can find you online and such?
Yeah, of course. So the website is www, obviously, .zen, Z-E-N, cats, C-A-T-S, rock, ROC.com. So that's zencatsrock.com. Also find me on Instagram. I'm not too active on there, but I am Zen Cats Rock on Instagram. Facebook, I'm JR Henderson, and I do have Zen Cats Rock on Facebook as well. So I'm pretty active on Facebook to contact me, but I'm always happy to cat chat or just talk. I always learn for, everything I have to offer. I always learn so much more. And that's the beautiful thing about this is, helping, feeling like you can come to a situation because someone needs assistance with it and coming out of it with more than you came with it, and everyone's set up for success. So I love adding tools to my toolbox and going from there. So please contact me. I love to talk, as you know, and listen too.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you. And we will link to all of that in the show notes so that people can find you online so that they can talk to you and listen to you as well, because you have lots of great things to say. And I want to kind of just briefly touch base on something you said just a minute ago. You mentioned something about shelter cats still being a little bit underserved as compared to dogs. My puppy has just finished his bone, I believe. So people may be able to hear him downstairs asking me to come. He says this podcast should be ending right about now. But I just want to give a shout out to you and say thank you so much, because you have inspired me to try to enrich my cat Wednesday's life a little bit more than I otherwise might. She, or a little bit more than I otherwise was, from everything toward telling me about Jackson Galaxy and a great book as far as catifying my home, to just this morning in the Animal Training Academy community, I saw you post about feeding in strategic ways for animals, and it has me thinking a little bit more about how I can make Wednesday's life a little bit happier. So thank you for that.
Oh, and you know what? Thank you for all your wonderful posts. I'm so glad the cat tree came together.
Well, after you suggested that I read the directions, it was much easier to put together. So thank you for that.
It's the one thing I do read the directions for in life are cat trees.
JR, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me this morning. I have really enjoyed it, and I'm sure that the listeners of the podcast are really going to enjoy it as well. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and look forward to chatting with you again soon.
It's been my pleasure.
We do, of course, appreciate all of you tuning in as well. And if you have enjoyed this episode and are interested in carrying on the conversation about working with the animals in our lives in the most positive, most fun, and most choice-rich ways, then as mentioned at the start of this episode, the Animal Training Academy community is waiting for you. Head on over to www.atamember.com and click on the membership button in the main menu to learn more about what members are describing as the Netflix social media platform for behavior geeks. That's it for this episode, though. Thank you so much for listening. You'll hear from us again soon.